Welcome back, Mr. Goodberry. The First Star Logistics studio is fully equipped and ready to record.
Welcome back to Bengals On The Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. I am your host, Joe Goodberry. The first preseason game is in the books. Cincinnati traveled to Philadelphia and lost to the Eagles 34-27, but there were moments where it was a much larger gap than that, as the Bengals defense really could not contain superstar Tanner McKee. I'm joking, of course. McKee did look good, and the Bengals backup quarterbacks did not, but we're not going to start with that. We're not going to start with the negatives or the backups. We're going to start with the positives. Well, sort of. The first team offense was positive. First team defense, there were moments. There's things to talk about. So we'll do first team offense, first team defense, and then go to backups for both sides, if that makes sense. So if you're interested in what guys caught my eye in the third and fourth quarters, we'll finish with that. Starting with the first team offense, Joe Burrow looked great. There was one play in particular that gives me so much hope for the season and so much hope for why the Bengals will probably start fast. Maybe, hopefully start fast. The defense is still the other side of the equation, right? But Burrow was in sync. He was quick. He made decisive decisions. And yes, it's a vanilla defense on the other side of the field. Vic Fangio is not game planning like he normally would. But the things you can evaluate in terms of his timing, pacing, timing, and chemistry with his receivers, especially with Shamar Chase. Chase looked fantastic. They had a nice conversion. First pass is a nice timing play. They had a nice conversion down the left sideline where Chase keeps his toes in. And then there's a nice anticipation play on the left sideline that Chase turns up to go for a score. That was their last play, I believe, in total for this day. Both guys looked in mid-season form. Honestly, you see that and you go, I don't even know if they should play anymore. I don't even know if, how much Joe Burrow do we need to see? He even took a hit on that final play, which he says he wants to do. It was a blitz, and it was a delayed blitz by the middle linebacker. I saw some people say, this offensive line, we got to be good. It wasn't the line there. And I'm not even sure it was Samaje Perine's fault either, as he's releasing to be the check down on the right side. You got a free runner, you got a hot blitzer, you got to get that ball out. And Burrow did, because he's super smart when it comes to this stuff and is usually right on time or ahead of everybody else. And he lays the ball out there with great anticipation. And what I mean by that is that ball is coming out before Jamar's even breaking down and then cutting outside. The ball lands right there. Kelee Ringo is far away from Jamar because Jamar is a great route runner, is quick, but also because that ball lands as soon as Jamar turns his head around, it's in his gut. And Ringo doesn't even have a chance to start breaking towards Jamar yet. And Jamar can just spin out, run 80% speed, and outrun the backup Philadelphia Eagles defense. Now, there were some guys out there, like Kelee Ringo may play for them. There were some other guys. Sidney Brown has a chance to start for the Eagles. So they did have some starters out there, but largely, it was a backup. It was a preseason. It was very vanilla look. So while those two looked great, I also thought Chase Brown looked really, really good, picking up where he left off. Explosive, quick. I thought he was in mid-season form as well for his decision-making and response time behind the line of scrimmage and through the hole, that I was like, okay, that looks better. It made the run game look better. And maybe that's the coaching. Maybe it's the offensive line, right? There's a lot of factors to that. It could just be, no more Frank Pollock and putting in Scott Peters, but the run game did look like it could work. And then there was a couple checkdowns where I'm like, oh yeah, Chase Brown. That's why he's special, right? Because not only is he a fast guy that can run inside, he's got decent bulk and density to him, but he can also catch that ball and turn those into really big plays. Almost broke one down the left sideline on a check down. That was reminiscent of Cowboys game. I think it was, because remember that was the game he jumped in the United Way bucket. So it had to be the Cowboys game. And I'm like, yeah, there's Chase Brown. That looks great. To note, though, T. Higgins had a pass over the middle. I want to say it was off of play action from under center, which we saw a few of those plays. We will break down a few of these on Tuesday's episode. This is just more, this is the recap. The game ended. I'm recording right now as soon as it ended and giving my thoughts and looking over the notes I wrote down while the game was going on. And I've got tweets and videos that I captured during that you can find at Joe Goodberry on Twitter as well if you're just catching up. Get my real time. Sometimes it doesn't make sense. I'm like, McKinley Jackson, he's still out there in the fourth quarter, and then it's like, oh, there's another tackle for a loss. But we're not going to talk about those guys just yet. But Higgins took a shot over the middle there, and then I don't think we saw him again. And interestingly enough, the next wide receiver off the bench was Charlie Jones. It wasn't Jermaine Burton. It wasn't Isaiah Williams, whoever you may believe. It was Charlie Jones. And I thought Jones had a good day. There are a couple plays that I still want him to be able to fight through contact. He's not the biggest, strongest dude. And then there was a deep ball down the sideline that wasn't a great throw, but I thought Charlie Jones, and I'd like to see you get to that. But it's interesting that he was the next guy. Clearly, they like him and still see the upside and development in Charlie Jones. But you should also see that in Jermaine Burton. We didn't get to see Burton too much today. So, for all the talk that he may have turned the corner and may have be on the right side of things now this year, we didn't get to see him too much. But he did have a really, really good punt return. And I think it was like third or fourth quarter, maybe early fourth, but it feels like closer to the midpoint of the game. Very nice punt return. Made like 5 or 6 guys miss. So one other note, I thought the offensive line was sufficient for the first team offense. PFF does grading, live grading, and it's not always accurate. They'll go through and they'll rewatch the film and things like that, and they'll regrade these guys. But based on live grading, they had Dylan Fairchild as the highest graded offensive lineman, and good. He had a really good grade. So I can't wait to go back and watch that. That could be huge. Tanner Hudson caught a touchdown, caught Burrow's other touchdown, and I'll get to the one play that really should get us excited. Tanner Hudson caught one of the 2 touchdowns, Shamar Chase being the other, from Joe Burrow. And then Tanner catches one in the fourth. So he's playing in the first without Mike Gesicki and Noah Fant out there. He's the receiving tight end, first one off the bench. And then he's still out there in the fourth quarter with the third string offense catching touchdowns from Desmond Ridder. So I don't know what that says about Tanner Hudson. I think they really like him. I think the quarterbacks really like him. I think he can play, right? We know he can play. But the Bengals are trying to upgrade their tight end room and trying to be a little bit more dynamic. And when you have guys like Gesicki and Fant, it kind of makes Tanner Hudson redundant unless, hey, that's our offense and we want as many guys that can do what those 2 guys do as possible. I still think when we get to projections, there's reason to believe that the Bengals could keep 5 tight ends, and maybe they don't only keep 5 receivers and go that route and only 3 running backs. I think it's possible to make that mixture and get that to work when we consider Gesicki and Fant and Hudson as primarily receivers. And we didn't see Cam Grandy with the number 1s. We did see Drew Sample with the number 1s. So I didn't see Grandy at all, really, other than special teams having a penalty. So I don't know where he fits in. I'll have to see on rewatch. I wasn't focusing on him. I was really trying to focus on Mims and Fairchild, but my eyes were diverted to Joe Burrow and Shamar Chase as they stole the show once again. Of course they do. That's the Bengals offense, right? They're such a pleasure to watch. But there was one play in particular that afterwards I was like, ooh, yeah, here we go. This is why 2025 could potentially be different. And it was a play. It probably preceded the Hudson touchdown. Had to have, I think, because it was first. I think it was the first drive. Burrow's in shotgun, takes the snap. He goes to quick throw left to Hudson. Hudson falls. Burrow has to all right, reset, get his posture back up, get his eyes back up. He bounces in the pocket, bounces back in the pocket to give himself more depth to look. Sees the rush potentially coming from the right, just scoots out and rolls out to the right very calmly. I'm thinking he's just going to throw it away. It's preseason. What are we worried about? We see that there's potentially a flag on the play because at that point there was a holding. I can't remember who was on, but he's just scrolling, and he just flips it to the back of the end zone. Shamar Chase, touchdown. And the play is nullified because of the penalty. But I said, yes, that's it. Because if you go back to any of my episodes early in the season, we touch on the same points about Burrow. He's not playing so well. doesn't look like prime Burrow. This isn't LSU Burrow in the pocket, right? His pocket presence early in the season has really been a detriment to his game. It's one of the things that makes him special is his ability to be calm in the pocket, go off script, and find and create magic when the play breaks down. That second reaction. And for him to do that already and do it very calmly, smoothly. Normally when he's trying to do this and he's not playing in the preseason or he's coming off injury, and in week 1, week 2, week 3, and I'm watching him, I'm like, yeah, that's his movements are kind of janky. His reactions are kind of scattered. But this wasn't that. And just seeing that, that gives me the confidence that things are going to be different for the offense to start this year. And I know the defense is the issue, and we're going to get to the defense next year. But if the offense was better in that Chiefs game and that Patriots game to start last year, they make the playoffs. As bad as the defense is and was, if the offense was just a little bit better in both games, the Bengals make the playoffs last year. And the difference could be Burrow playing like an MVP from week 1. Flipping it over to the first team defense, and it's loosely called that. Dax Hill didn't play. Cam Taylor-Britt didn't play. BJ Hill didn't play. Trey Hendrickson didn't play. So is it really the first team? Those are 4 of your impact players, even with the faults and warts and worries of those 2 corners. They've been 2 of your bigger playmakers, especially when Dax was good last year. The Eagles and Tanner McKee went right down the field. First drive, they give up a big run to Will Shipley at running back. If you remember him out of Clemson when we were doing draft work 2 years ago now, this will be a second year. But a lot of the film stuff we've done on the show about looking at the defense, a lot of stunts, a lot of slanting the defensive line. And you see that on the replay of this play, the long run, the defense is trying to shift or slant, or one guy is at the very least, but they end up with 3 defensive linemen on one side. The linebackers take, in my opinion, a passive angle to the play, and they're going to spill it to the outside. No one's to the outside. So it's a wide open lane. Will Shipley goes for like 38 yards, big play. So right away, you're like, okay, there's the defense. But largely it's because I think of the way they play. I think the Bengals ended up with 5 or 6 tackles for a loss on this game in total. So they just may have a slanting style defensive line. We're seeing a lot of movement on the defensive line from Al Golden. That just might be what they're going to live and die by the sword. So you hope to not get caught, too often when those things happen. The other thing I noticed from the first team defense, especially on that first drive, they really struggled to cover Jahan Dotson, the former first-round pick out of Penn State, now with the Eagles, formerly with the Commanders, right? It was traded Commanders to Eagles. He's quick. He's good. He's a good route runner, right? Josh Newton, though, couldn't keep up with him. DJ Turner couldn't keep up with him. It was just a couple plays. But they just Dotson just undressed both of them in man coverage and had some nice catches on that first drive. And then ends up in a goal line situation. I thought Chris Jenkins flashed. I started focusing on Chris Jenkins. He had a couple of flashes against the run. And then they go for it on 4th down in a tush-push scenario, and Tanner McKee gets in there. So not the worst drive. You give up a big run. You couldn't really cover in man, but your starting corners really aren't out there. So, these are probably things that are going to have to get ironed out. Largely, I don't think what we saw from the defense is indicative of what they're going to be in 2025 in any way. And I say that because, number one, your best players weren't out there. Number two, defense is more about scheming and game planning and calling and playing the right card at the right time, right? Offense is different, especially for the Bengals that have been together offensively for a long time, especially Burrow and Chase and Higgins and now Chase Brown. And, most of the offensive line when you're talking about Karras and Orlando Brown. But point is, those guys can go out and make plays against a vanilla defense without having much schemed up on offense. They just got to run what they run, and Shamar Chase being a freak is going to be Shamar Chase being a freak. Joe Burrow being a highly cerebral and accurate quarterback is still going to make plays, right? But the defense is different. The Bengals aren't working with a lot of superstars on defense. They need a good defensive coordinator. They're going to need a good scheme. They need to play with that energy and intensity that is just hard to replicate in a preseason game. Not trying to give them excuses, because you can't have those run fit mistakes like that. Those are going to kill you. You got to be able to play a little bit in man coverage as we start to shift a little bit to the second team. DJ Ivey got absolutely smoked today and then had pre-snap special teams penalties. So did McKinley Jackson, so did Cam Grandy. Like, we just can't have special teams field goal penalties and give the ball back to the offense. But sticking with the first team D, there was one play that went pretty far on Twitter and on social media, and it was Myles Murphy getting a pressure but unable to get off of the right tackle. And this is the backup right tackle for the Eagles. This is not Lane Johnson, but it's vintage Myles Murphy. You look fast off the snap. You look long. You look big, but you're doing nothing with your arms. And then you get to the quarterback because you're big and strong and fast, and then you can't disengage. You're jumping with one arm in the air. I had people saying it's holding. Yeah, because he never knocked the hands down of the offensive lineman. The offensive line is trying to hold you. Your job as a defense is why they learn so many moves, is to knock them down and get them away from you so they cannot hold you. Not very, like, you see that and you're like, Myles, come on, we need that. We don't want to see that, right? We want to see these moves land. We want to see your intensity, that strength, that athleticism. And instead, we got it with Shamar Stewart. 18 snaps out of him. This is bleeding first team defense with second team defense because he did get some snaps. There was a third down package, one snap. They forced a punt by the Eagles that the first team defense was out there, and it was Osai, Murphy, Chris Jenkins, and Shamar Stewart at defensive tackle. That was his first rep. And he misses, right? He goes for a double hand chop, doesn't hit anything. But it doesn't matter. Murphy, and Osai rip off the line really hard. Yeah, like instantly you can see, this is a pass rush, like, call. All right, guys, pin your ears back and go. And then Chris Jenkins, quarterbacks, breaks the pocket. Chris Jenkins flows with them, forces them to throw it away. So they get a stop there. And then if you focus on Shamar Stewart, he had a bunch of flashes in a positive way, from a tackle for a loss on like the second or third snap. He got a pressure and maybe a hit on the quarterback. We never got a good replay. I'm watching the Eagles broadcast, by the way, because I'm out of town. So they didn't show any of the positives for the Bengals. But it looks like he won against the left tackle and got to the quarterback. And that was 2 out of 3 plays right there, the tackle for a loss and the pressure. They left him unblocked on a play. Remember the one we broke down where Jake Browning is like, I got Shamar in my face, and I throw it, and of course, Shamar bats it down. Very similar to that, but Tanner McKee ends up throwing this thing away, or it was incomplete. I think DJ Ivey almost got in front of it. I think it was Ivey. Either way, they leave Shamar Stewart unblocked, and it's just too long and explosive. That gap that you're expecting to have is not there as he's right into the quarterback's face. But if you also watched him, he missed moves multiple times. There was one play he ends up going against 3 guys. I think they were trying to stunt, and he gets thrown right to the ground right away, lands on his butt and his back. There was another play where he just gives up his chest. The right tackle punches him, stuns him. I mean, he barely gets off the line at that point. So he's got to learn moves. This is no surprise. But he can be disruptive from a height, weight, speed, intensity standpoint. And the Bengals are going to need that. And if you were to ask me just off this preseason game, the snaps at the end are going to go Trey Hendrickson, Shamar Stewart, Joseph Osai, then Myles Murphy. Because I don't want to make sweeping judgments on Murphy again. I want to give him the benefit of the doubt that this is year 3. He was a young prospect. He's bigger and more complete now. He's in better shape. He has better moves now. We're waiting to see it. But as of right now, he's not going to be as disruptive. And especially if he's playing only left defensive end. Let Myles Murphy play right defensive end. I can't believe we're still asking for this. I am, at least. I want to see where the guy played in college if I want to replicate what he did in college. And it wasn't great what he did in college. So I'm just saying, can I get some production? Put him at right defensive end and let him work from there. Especially because Shamar can play left. And Osai can play left. And Osai can play defensive tackle. And Shamar can play left defensive tackle. So let's get Myles some chances over there if we really want to see what he is. Didn't see much out of Demetrius Knight and Logan Wilson. Just wasn't enough there. Geno Stone, I don't think, played more than a drive or 2, and then he left the game, so we didn't get to see much there. Jordan Battle saved a bunch of plays and was the final tackler on a few plays. As a safety, that's your job, right? He was also out there on the punt team in the second quarter, late in the second quarter. I didn't like that. I don't know what you're doing out there. I don't want to see these guys out there that late. Even Tanner Hudson's. I don't want to see him in the fourth quarter. I don't want to see McKinley Jackson in the fourth quarter. But this usually indicates an evaluation for the team that's different. Battle is going to be the starter, but why risk it on special teams right now? The defense as a whole, once the backups were in, there was not much to talk about. John Meta had a ball bounce off his face, and it was intercepted by Joe Giles Harris. That was interesting. But John Meta had a couple of stops that were really nice. I thought Shaka Hayward had a nice stop on special teams and on defense. Both those guys play special teams. Like, that's the back half of your linebacker. They're probably fighting for one job. They're an interesting duo to watch, keep an eye on. I didn't think Eric Gregory or Howard Cross did enough to say they should be getting snaps before McKinley Jackson. Now, maybe Jackson was just out there as a nose tackle, and it's because the Eagles were ahead and they're running the ball, and the Bengals went out there in their odd man front, and McKinley's the backup nose, so he was still playing. That would be my explanation for why he was still probably out there. But let's be smart about it at the same time. I thought Isaiah Thomas, number 51, had some good pass rushes as a defensive end. I didn't really notice Cam Sample in a positive way. I thought he looked sluggish. And I think we're going to have to think about, is he a lock to make this roster or not? DJ Ivey, rough game, right? Special teams and on defense, getting beat by a receiver that's wearing 41, we can't have that. That can't happen. He's wearing teens, single digits, and 80s only. You get beat by someone wearing 41, we got a problem. Ring the alarms. And that play's been highlighted, and it's on my Twitter at Joe Goodberry. But as soon as he flips his hips and looks for that ball, he just slows down. And you got to be able to play the ball while still running fast, or play the hands and catch up to that receiver. And then the backups on offense. The offensive line got progressively worse. Jalen Rivers, we highlighted him or low-lighted him, I guess, in some of the camp footage we had and broke down. He gave up a sack that was negated by a penalty, but it was an ugly rep. And he had a couple other pressures that I thought he gave up, and I'm just like, I hope on review that he was good the other time, because I wasn't focusing on Jalen Rivers, to be fair. I will review, and we'll see how he does, but part of me wishes they just put him back at guard. And does that mean you just kick Cody Ford to your swing tackle? That doesn't make me feel much better either, but it's better than nothing. We'll have to see how that goes. I want to see how Caleb Etienne and Devin Cochran played at right tackle as well, just to see if maybe there's any progress or development for either of those guys from what we saw last year. One guy in offense, I thought, showed a little bit of potential, showed a little bit that he's still young, is Taj Brooks. And Brooks, he looked quicker to me. He was already quick, but he looks in good shape right now, because he was a little thick last year at Texas Tech. And I think he's carried the load for so long, but he looked in really good shape. And he was a bowling ball. Did you see that play with he and Sidney Jones? They go right at it and just like a couple of rams. Probably not good for your health, either guy. More Taj. He initiated it, I think. Taj Brooks did. Brown just got his head down to make a tackle. But just bounced off of it. Sidney Brown came out of the game. He's like, enough of that. But Brooks stays on his feet. I thought he bounced around quite a few times when he was getting tackled in this game. It wasn't big stat-wise, but Brooks, that contact balance will translate. That lateral agility will translate. Now, I thought he was a bit indecisive as a runner, and that may take some time. So I can't wait to watch film and see if I can see from the end zone angle if it just wasn't there, if the holes weren't materializing, or if he couldn't manipulate that linebacker, if they were two-gapping or whatever, or the defensive lineman if they're two-gapping, or if he just was indecisive, right? But he was bouncing around a lot at the hole rather than hitting it and hitting it hard. I think that would be the difference in his game. If we watch him develop over 3 weeks, I expect him to get a big workload and go from there. Isaiah Williams really didn't do much on offense. He had a decent return. I kept thinking like Charlie Jones, Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Williams, these guys at the back half of the wide receiver room. I'd like to see someone have a big game. I thought Charlie Jones was okay. It wasn't there for Williams. On the other hand, I don't know if it wasn't there because Jake Browning was terrible. I get concerned with Jake Browning as a backup quarterback. I know he went on that Linsanity run in 2023, but they changed the scheme. They had to strip down the scheme for him and really control the offense. And that's what you got to do for backup quarterbacks. So I'm not killing the Bengals or Browning for that. It just is what it is. And when you see him just drop back and pass, he looks slow. He looks unathletic. He looks like he's indecisive. He doesn't look accurate. His arm looks super weak. Like he can barely make these throws. And it looks like he knows he can't, so he doesn't try some of these and get scatterbrained in the pocket a little bit. I don't want to kill the guy because we had some good times with Jake Browning, but I do have my concerns that he's not good enough. And I think everyone watching that game was ready to flip it to Des Ridder and say, let's go. And Ridder came in and completed a nice ball down the seam on the right side, threw a nice touchdown pass to Tanner Hudson. But other than that, Ridder, again, doesn't look like the most athletic guy either. Doesn't look like he's got the best arm, even though I think it's better than Browning's. He has the propensity to throw high or throw wild and inaccurate, and he had quite a few of those in this game that I thought could have kept the Bengals in the game or got them back on that final drive, and Ridder just didn't have that. And he's got less experience with the team, with these guys, so maybe it takes some time. But I'm not sure I feel great. Like watching Tanner McKee, I wish that was our backup. You know what I'm saying? And it's backup quarterback, so I don't want to kill him, but it does affect. The point here is it affects our evaluation. If the quarterback's got bad pocket presence, you can't kill the offensive line all the time. If the quarterback doesn't have a great arm, you can't kill the receivers all the time. If he's not accurate and a receiver drops the ball because it's where he's not expecting it, can't kill the receiver. So these are things to keep in mind when the backups are in there on the offensive side. Having said that, they still came back. The backups still put up 13 points, while the starting offense put up 14. Now the starting offense did that in 2 drives, and the backups did that in the remainder of the game. But still, they did end up scoring a little bit and getting some field goals, which is important. Evan McPherson nailing a few extra points, and 136 or 37 yarder and 151 yarder. And the 51 yarder to me is important because it reminded me of his last year's kicks until the very end. It's going up. And it's going like to the post, and then it just drifts back right to the middle and nails it. And that's how he used to kick. And last year's it was up, going to the post, and then choof, it would just miss. So I don't know. That's one kick, but it did give me a glimmer of, okay, maybe things are fixed. Maybe whatever the issue was. Now we still got to figure out who was long snapping on those plays. And when he was missing last year and there was a long snapper battle, we were like, yeah, it was last year, right? Or was it 2 years ago? Either way, when he was missing, we'd go, who was long snapper? Who was the holder? It was the holder battle last year. That's what it was. We're trying to figure out who the holder was. But that hasn't started yet. And I will want to see who these guys are, who's out there. I thought Ryan Rico had some good punts, even though they had a big return against them due to bad punt coverage. And I think that was the play where I noticed that Jordan Battle was still out there. And Tanner McLaughlin couldn't bring down the runner. And then the long snapper, I think it was Calamitis there, ended up pushing him out or tripping him out of bounds. So it's worth noting that special teams, besides the penalties, you can't say besides the penalties, actually, because the penalties are huge. You may have won that game without it, actually. So no, special teams doesn't get a pass. Darren Simmons, you don't get a pass. You can fix the kicking game. You can have a better punting game. But if you can't cover and you can't play discipline, then I don't have anything nice to say about the special teams then. Overall, you lose a 7-point game. And like I said, I don't think this is indicative of what the defense is going to be. I don't think they're a very talented defense overall. And they look slow. They look unaggressive. These are things you can work on, not the speed, but making sure you have an aggressive, energetic defense when the regular season starts, because you're going to need it. You're going to need these guys to play above their weight class. What is the phrase? Punching above your weight class. You're going to need this defense to do that. On offense, they look ready to roll. And we're going to get one more game, it sounds like, against the Commanders. Maybe we'll get a couple more drives in that one. That's on the 18th. So we've got 11 days, 10 days, depending on when you're watching this, until that point. And then that'll probably be it for the starters in preseason. Let's get out of there healthy. I think they're largely healthy. did not see Zach Taylor's press conference, so correct me if I'm wrong on that. Put it in the comments and let me know. Until next time, Bengals on the Brain, presented by First Star Logistics. Until next time, that's how it's supposed to go. Hoo day.